Hello, welcome back to the Coleman channel, and welcome back to another installment of Behind the Process, the series where we talk about the creative process, the behind the scenes, the making of things. And in today's installment, I would like to take you through the behind the process, the creating of my first visual media university project that I worked on all the way back in, I think we finished in October. Anyway, it's a documentary project and it's called The Father, the Son and the 21st Century. If you're curious about this documentary, The Father, the Son and the 21st Century, it is actually available on this channel right now. All my university projects will be available on this channel for you to watch. All the visual media stuff anyway that I've worked on so far, there's free that I worked on in my second year of university. So if you want to check them out, please go ahead and do so. Anyway, yes, The Father, the Son of the 21st Century, a university project, a documentary film project that I worked on with 3 other students. I think this one will be interesting because I want to guide you through the production of this thing, not as, you know, a videographer, not as like an employee, not as like a brief or a project that we're working on for a client. This is a project we're working on as students to get marked, to get graded, and a brief from a lecturer, essentially. So yes, this should be quite interesting if you are a university student in film or visual media or anything like that, or documentary filmmaking or something. This should be an interesting behind the process for you. Father, the Son in the 21st Century was a project that we did that was basically delving into the relationships between the Catholic Church and the youth of today, and how the Catholic Church basically tried to reach out to the youth of today in the changing climate of, you know, emerging technology and alternate beliefs, and just, you know, just the opening up of, I guess, social acceptability, and just, you know, being more open to being who you want to be, and just there's more choices in what you want to believe or what you don't want to believe, and how the Catholic Church, this international institution has been around for fucking million to billion years, how they try and reach out to the youth of today and try and get them on board with them, while still, I guess, I don't know, respecting their beliefs and their ways of thinking that traditionally, I guess, the Catholic Church would challenge, I suppose. This is a really cool one to make. This was actually our documentary project shifted a lot actually during its production, because there was a lot of different stages in the marking process that had to get made, such as, you know, conceptualizing the documentary project itself, pitching the documentary project to the class, because you have to pitch these things, and making a portfolio and putting together a presentation to pitch who this would cater for in terms of audience and stuff like that, and how you're going to tackle these different things, and how you're going to tackle the subject matter, and how you're going to get that across through your interview subjects and all this kind of stuff. And obviously the documentary itself. My role in the documentary was editor. I volunteered to be the editor because I edit a lot of stuff anyway. Editing's, honestly, I'm a freak. Editing's one of my favourite parts of the process, because I've said this before in other behind the process installments. I'm pretty sure it's the final part where filming the whole thing is essentially like filming jigsaw pieces, and the editing process is where you put all the jigsaw pieces together to make the full picture. It's kind of how I see editing. So I really wanted to be the one to get the final look of the project across. I also helped with a little bit of the videography. I wasn't the main videographer or cameraman, obviously. That was one of our other students that were on board with the project. We had a producer, a director, a cameraman, a videographer, and me, the editor. So I did a little bit of the filming, but primarily I did the editing. Yeah, this is a project, like I said, that changed in concept a lot. Well, I mean, the original concept we were really gunning for, that we actually pitched, this was the one that we pitched before it completely did a 180 and did something else, was we wanted to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses and their relationship with people that don't believe in, well, I guess don't follow the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses, essentially, because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that if you don't repent and accept Jesus, you're all basically condemned to hell, right? And we wanted to do a project about how Jehovah's Witnesses get on with people who don't follow their beliefs, and make friendships with them, and are friendly, and, you know, get along and all this kind of stuff. And I think the project was going to be called The Good Word is Knocking at Your Door. Yeah, this was one that we focused on for a long time. I think our producer came up with the idea originally, and I think we all pretty much came on board with it straight away. We thought it was a really great idea. We thought it was something different and something that would be, I guess, a little bit controversial, I suppose, just because of the subject matter and the beliefs that Jehovah's Witnesses have, and I guess trying to paint them in a different light, because I think a lot of people just see them as people just knock on doors and try and get you to repent and stuff, or trying to humanize these normal people that just have beliefs different from other people, essentially. So yeah, we pretty much went ahead of that concept straight away, and like I said, we made the presentation for it, we pitched it and all this kind of stuff, but as the time, because everyone was supposed to like schedule their film days and stuff, and as the days were ticking on, I think we started to realise it'd be actually really difficult to get this together, because obviously we didn't know any Jehovah's Witnesses personally. I knew people that knew Jehovah's Witnesses, and I think some other people did as well, but obviously the whole idea was supposed to get the point across that Jehovah's Witnesses can get on with people that aren't of their church and stuff, but we didn't know. Like, our lecturer was really harping on about the idea that she really liked the idea of showing off the relationships between these people, Jehovah's and non-Jehovah's, and how they got on, and filming them, getting along and going about their day with each other. But we didn't know enough. We didn't know anyone that knew Jehovah's Witnesses like that, essentially. And then all the leads that we had to reach out to these people basically went cold, and we couldn't reach out to anyone in particular to become subjects for the interview itself, or any kind of interviews at all, or for the project. I think the second conclusion we kind of came to was that I think obviously one of the biggest ideas for the documentary itself was that it had to look real nice. We wanted to get some really nice filming locations and stuff like that. I wanted to do a lot of like, what I really wanted to do a lot of like gonzo journalism kind of thing. I'm a massive fan of gonzo journalism for the likes of Hunter S. Thompson or Andrew Callahan and stuff like that. I really love the idea of people telling a story, like letting the subjects of the documentary tell the story themselves, as opposed to like leading them with questions and stuff like that. Like by getting involved with what they're doing, I really wanted to get really boots on the ground, kind of following them along as they went to their door-to-door kind of thing, and being with them and talking to them while they were doing it. To do that, we were going to actually use my own camera setup, my Sony A7 II, and my DJI Ronin S gimbal, to do a lot of the boots on the ground walking around and talking to people kind of thing while they were doing their door-to-door stuff. But yeah, we realised we probably weren't going to be able to get into that kind of thing, and the kind of places we would have been interviewing people, like in the Jehovah's churches and stuff, we kind of came to the conclusion they wouldn't look very aesthetically pleasing. A lot of churches for the Jehovah's Witnesses don't actually look very grandiose or, beautiful, like maybe a Catholic church is. There's no like stained glass windows or high roofs, high ceilings or anything like that, or benches or pews or whatever they're called, a big row of them. There's nothing like that. They're more like offices, essentially. They're very low key. They don't look very exciting. Pretty much every Jehovah's church looks the same as one Jehovah's church is the same as the other, essentially. So there was a lot of factors that kind of came into play where we kind of went, maybe this isn't going to be the best idea. And as the days were ticking on, this was a very stressful one to do, because any other project in university that involves just yourself and isn't like going out for shoot days or organising everyone to go out and do something, they're not as stressful as like doing something like organising everyone and going out to do something. Trying to get everyone together to do a project, get organised for a shoot day, get all the equipment and go to the location and organise with the interview subject and stuff, it can get quite stressful, especially as the days are ticking on. Filming any kind of visual media for a university project can get pretty like kind of nail biting, and like right, we need to kind of get this going. And especially since we were the group that had this idea that we were really gunning for and pitched and all this kind of stuff, and we got pretty far into it as the weeks went on, coming to the conclusion that it probably wouldn't work out for the factors I just told you. It got pretty tricky, and then of course I think we came to the conclusion, I think it was our cameraman that came to the conclusion, maybe we should just focus on the same kind of thing but in a different tone. So instead of going for Jehovah's Witnesses and the relationship with non-Jehovah's, we decided to go for the Catholic Church and the relationship with the youth, hence the title. I came up with the title, I think, and I thought that was a pretty good idea. The Father as in God, the Church, the Son as in the youth of today, and the 21st century as in their correlation with the two of those kind of things. and how they cope with it, essentially. So this was the idea that we went for. We went out to do a little bit of research at, I think, Glasgow Library, or some library like that. Basically got together to basically, this is the game plan. Who should we reach out to? Who in the church? Any kind of youth groups or Christian youth groups or whatever that we can reach out to bridge this gap and talk to them, essentially, in their respective locations. And, you know, obviously what the skeleton of the whole thing is going to look like, right? So we got the big thumb up from the lecturer and we were good to go, essentially. Obviously the whole kind of gonzo journalistic aspect that I talked about, in the style of going out and doing things with people like Louis Theroux or Andrew Callaghan or something, was basically out the door at this point. We're going to just do something a bit more traditional as a documentary project. We had 2 subjects we spoke to that we managed to reach out to. We spoke to the priest who was over at the chapel that we visited, which was in the location of our university, and we spoke to a young fella. I think it was an American dude that was actually over here. I think it was at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, which is like a music university or music school that happened to have a Christian union inside it. So our producer, I think, reached out to pretty much both of these people. So we managed to get the contacts up with them ready to go, and we were ready to go to talk to these 2 subjects for our interview, for our project. So we basically had our 2 interview subjects to get their perspectives on the Catholic Church, the youth's relationship with Catholicism in general, or Christianity in general, and what the church could be doing different to reach their level, essentially, and reach where they are in order to reach out to them and bring them on board to their beliefs, essentially. So the first interview that we did was with the father, who I think was actually part of the chaplaincy team of our university, which was handy. I think that's probably how we managed to get the lead. And I think that was in August. August 17th is the date that's in my head for some reason, so I guess we went out in August to do this interview. So we rolled up, we got our equipment from the kit store at the university. We had my Sony A7 and we had the Ronin SC gimbal. So the kit room at UWS is really fucking good. So we got a bunch of equipment. We had a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro, which was our hero camera for the main bit of the talking head, and then we had my camera as the secondary. We had the Rode Wireless Go, which is a wireless lav mic that I've worked with before and with Studio FV that we used for the interview. We had a Deity V-Mic D3 Pro, which was a backup mic that was on my camera. We also used it for a little bit extra audio later on. We had a Manfrotto 504 tripod for the cameras. And that was your lot, really. We pulled up with the kit. Cameraman had a car. We just drove down to the church and we did the interview. We had some questions. The producer lined up some questions. They were the same questions that we asked for the youth as well for a later interview. And we just did that, and we got some B-roll as well with the gimbal, got some nice walking shots going into the church and some, like, just to capture the grandiose size of it all. Some nice B-roll with the father lighting some candles and just all this general stuff. Some of the stained glass windows, some statues of Jesus and all this kind of stuff. We had some B-roll as well of the father giving us basically a tour of the whole place. So I just followed him through as he talked us through the whole thing. Originally, we were just I said to the guy, I was like, listen, don't worry about talking to it. Like, you can talk us through the whole thing, but we're not going to use any of the audio. It's just to get some B-roll, essentially. But as it turns out, for the lecturer, it's not really up to code to use video of someone speaking and not using audio of them talking, because the whole idea was we had the video of him talking, going through the church, and we had the audio from the interview itself underneath that. But it's not up to code for you to use audio from another thing and have it under video of someone talking, because it's just not the thing that you do. So we ended up not doing that. But as a result, obviously we had to chop up some stuff. The father actually took us through an area in the upstairs, like a little hangout kind of spot that was put together for the youths, like a youth hub essentially for the kids just to go and hang out. And then the idea was, like, if the subject of Christianity came up, then they could talk about it and stuff. It's basically a place for them to go and play pool and play the Wii and all this kind of stuff. We had that area there because obviously that was part of the conversation of what they were doing to try and reach out to the kids. So we ended up using that whole part of him talking and getting us through the youth hub itself. So that audio got used in the end, which is always nice. The interview with the youth himself was a little bit different. We were not all able to go to the interview itself. I think it was the producer who had some kit managed to go down and just basically ask the questions. I think she went down, worked with some of the other film students that she knew, and it was a little bit of a different thing. It was down at the Royal Conservatoire itself, so it was a bit tricky getting B-roll of the conservatoire and also the inside the interview location. But there was some nice B-roll of the youth reading his own Bible. He had a tattoo of Psalms, like one of the chapters in Psalms on his arm, so it was a little bit trickier to work with that footage because there wasn't as much to go with as there was with the church and the father. But obviously we made it work because we all put it together. And these two interviews were linked together by narration. Obviously I do a lot of voiceover work anyway. I'm offering my voiceover work on Fiverr if you're interested. I basically wrote the script for a voiceover and I did the narration underneath, like to link up the two. Well, to basically bookmark the whole documentary, really, to open up the documentary and close out the documentary, and then the intro and outro were sandwiched the two interviews we had. So it was intro narration, interview with the priest, interview with the youth, outro narration, and then that's your lot, really. We sourced a lot of different footage to put everything together, especially particularly for the intro and outro. The opening sequence, which has got a little Bible and a cross, was filmed by our cameraman in his own house. The footage of the big chapel that you see, was B-roll left over from my work in Studio FV when I was actually putting together the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt, which is the previous installment of Behind the Process we've done already. That was footage and B-roll that I think I mentioned that we weren't allowed to use. It was of the Paisley Chapel. So I basically just went in the studio and asked to dig out the hard drive and dig out that footage I've already filmed of the DJI Pocket gimbal. And I just took that footage and reused it for the documentary because it fit perfectly anyway. It's not a Catholic church, but it falls within the veil of Christianity, so we thought it was appropriate to use it. So that footage got used after all for this documentary. So I went in, got footage off the hard drive and slapped it in there, which is very useful. So the trickiest thing obviously was getting the narrative across you wanted to do. Obviously you leave it up to, you basically come up with the structure of how you want the documentary story to be told, and the talking heads, the interview subjects have got to kind of guide it in that particular direction. And the whole thing was the relationship between the youth of today in the 21st century and the Catholic Church, and how they correlate with each other and how they reach out to each other. So I think we were successful enough in getting that point across. The two subjects basically kind of came to the same conclusions, which was interesting. Basically trying to start where they are with the youths, where they are, and they're not like entranced by just words from a book, and it's not the culture here in Scotland anymore. And I think that's especially interesting from the youth who was like an American Christian. Obviously that's way more of a big cultural aspect of that country as opposed to here. So I guess he provides an outsider perspective living in Scotland from his perspective as an American, and how it's different over here and how the Catholic Church could be doing different to make the relationship work. So I think the conclusion came quite nicely from these two subjects, and I think they were able to get that point across without ever even meeting each other, which was interesting. So yeah, I think we were really happy with the end result. I was happy with how it came out in the end, in the post-production process and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of really tricky elements we had to take care of, and we had to do some camera trickery, like I think some shots on the Sony were overexposed. Like there was a shot where the camera pans into a big Bible on a podium in front of the church, and because the text was in red, you can't even see the text before it got edited. Like it was just white. So I managed to fix the exposure essentially. The colour grading came through massively when we were putting this together. And there was a lot of, obviously one of the things I find tricky personally is matching up cameras, like two different shots, two different cameras. You're usually meant to shoot quite dull, which would be done in the Blackmagic, but with my Sony it was a little bit different. It was a bit more exposed and a bit brighter, so trying to match these up was quite tricky, but we came through in the end. Our cameraman, who's very well versed in black magic, very well versed in the editing software that black magic uses as well, not Adobe Premiere. Was able to fix up the color grade and match up with the Sony footage, which was really, really handy. The talking head shot with the black magic had a weird shutter problem. I think it's when the shutter speed is different from the lighting in the room, it causes banding like that. But I learned a little trick on YouTube where if you, I can't exactly remember how I did it, but it's like if you like get another shot of the talking head and basically slow it down, and then turn the opacity down a little bit, they match up perfectly and the banding miraculously goes away, and it works really, really damn well. Like, yeah, we managed to miraculously fix the banding and it looks nice and great and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, there was a little bit of trickery involved, especially like within the youth hub. The lighting's like completely different from the big bright boisterous lighting that was in the church itself. Making sure they're all nice and balanced to look good was tricky. In that whole sequence was pretty tricky, but it came through. So yeah, considering the fact that we started off a completely different concept that we pitched and everything, I think we managed to come through quite well, and I think we all worked very well as a team to make it happen, especially because we were like putting the pitch together and the PowerPoint presentation together for the Jehovah's Witness project. And that was tricky in itself because I don't use PowerPoint, I don't use Microsoft. The Microsoft Office package, I use a LibreOffice because LibreOffice is free. I think the LibreOffice alternative for PowerPoint is called Impress. So I've never worked with Impress before. I've not done any kind of PowerPoint presentation in a long time. I was wanting to put it all together. And it was basically about how we're going to reach out to these people, the connections, the equipment that we're going to use, the audience that we're reaching out to. So we had to do a bit of research and who we thought this kind of thing would appeal to. Obviously, that kind of got all wiped when we decided to change the subject, but really I think the kind of documentary we're going for, the Catholic Church one, kind of would have appealed to the same kind of audience we were aiming for anyway. And that's really behind the process of the documentary itself. The last thing, of course, was putting the portfolio together, which was basically everyone's paperwork from their respective things that they did. The proposal for the documentary itself, and an essay basically on everyone's involvement and how we approached our jobs, essentially, whether we're the producer or the director or the cameraman or the editor, which I was. So we had to basically scramble and get all this paperwork together and then send it all over to the producer, because it was the producer's job to send all of the portfolio together. And that was probably the biggest scramble out of the whole thing. That was probably the most stressful part, was getting all the paperwork together as opposed to doing the documentary itself. But it all went well, everything got submitted, and I was happy with my grade, and I think everyone else was too. So yes, that is the behind the process of the Father, the Son, and the 21st century. The logo itself was pretty cool. I thought it'd be an intro because obviously it opened up with the Bible and the cross, and obviously the idea is the more old, like the Eldritch Church compared to the future emerging technology of the 21st century. We had this, and over I had a green screen of iMessage, the little bubbles that pop up. So I got the green screen of that, the sound of it popping up, and I had the text pop up with the title with the, the phone tapping and all that kind of stuff. I can't remember the effect I used to make the titles scroll, but yeah, like it's being typed out essentially. And that was really cool. I was really happy with how that whole thing came out, and I got the two opposing worlds together quite well. But yes, that is behind the process of the Father, the Son of the 21st century. If you're interested in the documentary, again, it is on my YouTube channel for you to watch. I think it's probably in the playlist University Projects, but it's not too far in my feed as well. I uploaded it probably 1 or 2 months ago, so it's in there anyway if you want to take a look, as well as other things like my short film and my studio project as well. We'll probably do some behind the processes on those in the future. But thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think of the documentary. Put it in the comments below or on that video or whatever. If you've got any university projects coming up as well, feel free to let us know and how it's all going, etc. Let's get a nice discourse on our little creative projects, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, behind the process, thank you all for watching.